It has been a long, long time since I have felt the sun upon my shoulders, the wind in my hair, and the dominion of man under my foot. As a system put into place by the divine, as much as I hate it, has done an excellent job in keeping things, well, relatively intact. For ages, only two of us at a time would rule over this world, one to balance out the other. And it has worked, until now. Until me. You see, I had imagined one of several of my siblings would be chosen to balance me. Imagine my shock, my surprise, my utter glee when the divine chose you.
Shandor, it's been a long time since both our feet have tread the homeland together.
Since our childhood, yes? Back when Father would skip us around time and space, giving us glimpses of what could be.
What should be, brother. I remember you used to smile when you would come back from your trips with Father.
Ah, Snorky. I feel that you and I were smiling for two completely different reasons.
Snarky. Yes, I remember. I used to get so upset when you would call me that as a child.
Comparatively, Archie, you are still a child.
Sean.
No, not a child. A pet. I see you still wear your reminder that you were once leashed.
I wear things which bring me joy, Shandor. It was Father's suggestion.
As was all of this, including the cycles of rain.
Father was a wise man.
Father was a...
I am many things, brother. I am kind. I am patient. To a degree, I am tolerant. However, speak ill of our Father in my presence, and I will lose that patience. I will shed the cloak of tolerance, and I will not be kind.
Do not worry yourself. I have no intention of starting a fight with you up here. The aftermath would lessen the decorum of our great home. No, little Snorky. You and I will face off down there, on their world. And when we do, no degree of patience, tolerance, or kindness will stop me.
I will not have to stop you, Sean. I have already set things into motion, the likes of which you cannot comprehend, which would be more than enough to put a stop to anything you plan to do to the people of the divine.
I have demons. I have necromancers. I have dragons. What, pray tell, do you have that could possibly oppose me? Legions of mortal men? Wave after wave of humanity crashing against my forces like the ocean on the rocks. What could you have that I could possibly fear?
I have a Frank.
Welcome back to Let's Be Frank, a storytelling podcast about an ordinary man that finds himself in extraordinary circumstances. It's also a story where you, yes you, the all-important listener, get the opportunity to be one of the fates that directs Frank's actions and decisions. When we last left, our group of heroes were captured and taken before a very paranoid king who was ready to send them all to his dungeon, or worse. Frank, having a few sessions of Game of Thrones under his belt, as well as the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended cut, was ready to talk with the king. What will poor Frank do? An all-important listener named Orion1221 advised Frank of what he needed to do next. So, after bending the knee and looking up to meet the eyes of the king, Frank opened his mouth and said,
I do not love the bright sword for its sharpness, nor the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. I love only that which they defend, the city of Auvendale. And I would have loved her for her memory, her ancientry, her beauty, and her present wisdom. Not feared, Save as men may fear the dignity of a man, old and wise.
The group of heroes looked back and forth to one another in astonishment. The room was quiet as King Jeremy pondered Frank's response.
Wise words for one in your situation, but you have not answered my question. Unless you wish for the dungeon, I'll only ask once more. Who are you, and why are you in my city?
I'm Frank, and these guys are my friends. And we're here to save you.
Save me? Pray, tell me exactly how you intend on doing that.
Well, I guess you could say we came to save you from yourself.
Frank then stood to face the king directly.
Now, in order to do that, there's a few things I'll need to know. And it's okay to tell us everything. I mean, we can't go and tell anyone unless you let us, right?
The king studied Frank for a moment, then waved him to continue.
Okay, now you mentioned in your speech you had people that were working against you inside the city, right?
Yes, those are the reports which have been brought to me.
So, when you questioned the first one you caught, did they tell you anything?
Ulrich's eyebrow arched a bit as he listened to Frank.
Well, although we have reports of hearings of such deeds, we have not yet been able to bring one of them in to be questioned.
So you're not really certain they're here doing these things, right?
You dare question the integrity of my men?
No, Your Grace. I think perhaps what Frank is asking is if we can trust the people that were talking when your men overheard them.
The king studied both of them intently.
You see, if the people your men heard talking weren't trustworthy, then the information can't be trusted either. Were they able to question the people they heard?
No. Once the men heard the words, they would enter the area it was heard from, but no one would be there.
Frank thought hard for a moment, then seemed to have an idea.
Then it may not have been the guards' fault at all then.
Preparing himself, Frank made ready to use the art of ventriloquism.
So if you hear a sound this way...
The king turned his head to his right, but there was nothing but a candle there.
But you don't see anyone.
The king turned and, upon seeing no one to his left, stood pointing to the group.
What kind of sorcery is this?
Your Grace, I am a mage in training, and I can attest there is no magic being used here.
The king slowly returned to his throne, watching the group carefully and closely.
How your voices leave your bodies.
It's ventriloquism, Mog. It's where you make your voice sound like it's coming from someplace else.
Like when Boots talked to Mog when we had campfire and tell him we need to sweat less.
That was you?
It was funny.
Let's stick to the topic at hand, ladies.
So you see, if only one person were going around town tossing their voice into dark corners, all of the guards would bring you reports, but wouldn't find anyone.
Why would anyone go through such lengths if there were no actual crime?
Your Grace, almost all of your men are off to make war. The rest are running around the city chasing ghosts, who are watching the walls and the horizon.
Speaking of the army, you said that you were marching them south. Can I ask why? I mean, you said that they were moving against you, but how are they doing that?
The king stood and began pacing in front of the thrones, his hands behind his back.
A handful of my men, out on routine patrol, saw a small group of southern soldiers massing supplies at the border. They relayed the supplies could be used for the construction of siege machines, defenses, or even a temporary fort to protect their men and supplies for a long venture.
How many men, sire?
Only 50 or so southerners, but enough to start getting things ready. The men I had on patrol relayed that the men of the south watched them intensely and even refused to conduct their business while they were within sight.
Frank thought some more and walked a little to the left, seeing a great map hanging upon the wall.
So that circle is here, correct?
Yes.
And the road that takes you to the southern border is this one, right?
Frank pointed and the king simply nodded. Mog walked over and nodded as well.
What if they weren't planning an invasion?
Doesn't look like good invasion spot.
They'd have their backs against a rushing river right there.
The river noise would make it easy for others to sneak up on them.
Your Grace, I have to agree with my friends. This is almost certainly not an invasion.
My primary advisor assured me that there could be no other reason for the gathering next to the river at our borders.
Unless...
Everyone in the room turned to look at Ulrich. Looking back up at the map, his eyes traced the long winding road which followed the river through the Southern Kingdom's lands to its city.
perhaps a bridge?
Frank's eyes immediately flew to the map.
That's it. There's the answer. The people in the Leaky Stein were complaining about not having their normal things from the Southern Kingdom. You must have traded with them a lot.
We did, quite a bit until they...
No, Your Grace, don't you see? The absolute best way to destroy two great kingdoms is to have them destroy each other.
Ulrich winced slightly at the words, as Joanna joined in as well.
So, if this kingdom and your friends to the south went to war, who would stand to profit the most?
Not only that, but by having your armies march, you're spending a lot of money. I mean, stuff you can't get back quickly. The men, the pay, the supplies, the armor and weapons, the food. I'd be willing to bet that the cost was more than you wanted.
War is expensive. That is why it is resorted to only when necessary.
So, army marches on men making bridge. Upset Southern King? Southern King makes war with our king because of insult. Kings fight. One wins, but weaker for it. And Shadow King steps out and takes everything?
Exactly.
The king slumped back into his throne.
Set us free, Your Grace. Send us with your mark and allow us to stop this war before it begins.
And once it is done, we will set out to find the identity of the Shadow King and his accomplices.
The king eyed the group warily, made a decision, then reached to his table next to the throne and tossed his signet to Frank.
Take this as proof of intent and speak words for me. Tell the general there to return with all but 200 of the men. Those 200 are ordered to go and assist with the bridge builders with whatever they may need.
Yes, Your Grace. And may the force be with you.
There was a short, awkward moment before Joanna grabbed Frank, smiled at the king, and the group headed out, escorted by the two soldiers at the doors. With their weapons returned, they made their way to the stables to fetch their mounts.
Oh my goddess, Frank, you are awesome.
I knew you could do it, Frank.
Frank Puny Man Chosen One!
Mog, if you keep telling people that's my name, they're gonna start believing it.
Well, I, for one, don't consider it a complete passing success. We did have to step in and assist you from time to time back there.
And that's what team building and teamwork is all about.
As Ulrich motioned for the stablemen to bring their horses, he watched Frank fumble with the signet in his possession.
Don't lose that, or you'll be getting another chance to test your Chosen One skills with the General of the Armies.
As the group got their steeds ready, and Mog was preparing to have Frank ride with him, the young stable boy brought out a large Percheron horse out to the group. Ulrich looked up at the large beast, which was much larger than all the other horses.
You've made a mistake, boy. That isn't our horse. So, I take it you're not Frank?
Everyone turned and looked to Frank. He looked about, then slowly walked to the stable boy.
That's me. I'm Frank.
Then this horse is yours. Didn't see who brought it in, but here she is. Whoever left it said it was for you. She's a beauty.
Frank approached the horse and looked up. The horse looked down upon him and began sniffing his pockets.
Bet she wants a treat.
Joanna removed a nugget of white from her belt and tossed it to Frank. He placed it in his hand and offered it to the horse, which immediately took it into its mouth and began crunching it. Frank managed to scale the horse using straps and a slight nudge from Mog. They immediately exited the city and pointed the steeds to the southern route, riding hard to try and catch an army with quite the head start. 3 days of hard riding with little sleep brought them closer to the army they were attempting to catch.
So, how much longer till we catch the army?
From tracks they leave, they not far.
Why does everything on me hurt?
You're not used to riding a horse. Your first experience riding alone is this, and it's hard on all of us.
Well, I can tell you this. Do you see that ridge we're about to crest? We'd better be able to see the army once we get to the top.
Oh yeah, why is that?
If we don't, then they were too far ahead, and we'll be too late to stop a war.
As the group crested the ridge, they saw the army preparing to leave the area. They had set up tents from the night before, but had not taken them down today. Ulrich saw the cavalry forming up in front of the ground troops, with archers bringing up the rear.
Ulrich, are they marching?
Yeah!
Ulrich did not wait, surging forward, attempting to catch the command group before they made it within view of the workers at the border. The others quickly followed him down. The generals and his entourage were alerted to the riders behind them, so the march was halted temporarily. The group, led by Ulrich, rode to place themselves between the army and the border.
General, we must speak before you move against the men at the border.
You wear the standards of another kingdom. I have war to make by the will of my king.
General, I have... Oh, God.
Frank, winded and exhausted, fell from his horse and onto the ground.
Who is this man?
He's been sent to deliver a message to you from your king.
He would never have sent such a frail-bodied man to deliver his words. The absurdity is enough to...
The general's words stopped when he saw the king's signet in Frank's upturned hand. Slowly, Frank rose to his feet and looked up at the general.
Very well, messenger. Tell me, what words does the king entrust you to carry for him? You... You shall not pass!
There was a moment of nervous silence before he continued.
It seems like we were bamboozled. There's no army marching on us. There are no treasonous spies within the walls.
With exception of the one spreading false rumors and others' lies.
There's more, General.
Right, he said to return with all the troops. Except for 200. He said to send them to the border to help their men with what they're working on.
And what are they working on? Speak, man.
At this point, Mog returned from the direction of the border. Mog dismounted his horse and approached Ulrich.
No, it's okay. He's with us.
Frank Wright, men building bridge. Said it'd help trade.
Frank then turned to the general, who seemed to have made up his mind.
Captains, to me!
As other horses began gathering around, the general began sharing his plans with his captains. The group of heroes gathered with Frank.
So, war averted, but it still leaves us with more questions.
Which other bordering kingdoms wanted this to happen? On the map in the throne room, there are 3 others bordering.
And any of them would have the armed capabilities to attack once a war was over.
Mog not sure. Which one's enemies?
None of them, unfortunately. We also need to find out who was going around town spreading rumors.
We have at least a week before the general can get his troops back.
Because once they get back, the person in the shadows will know that they lost, and will probably quietly slip out of town.
So, have to find Shadow King and Shadow Gossip Spy.
Yeah, but which one first?
If we catch the spy, then we may be able to get information on who hired them.
But if we waste too much time, like the guard already have, searching for an elusive shadow spy, then it's that much more time the Shadow King has time to plan to make his next move.
Yeah, the two are not mutually exclusive.
Everyone looked to Frank as his hand slowly opened, dropping the signet. His eyes closed as he fell to his knees.
No!
Shocked and confused, everyone rushed to Frank's side.
Frank, what happened? What is wrong?
My reports.
Reports?
They were due Monday. Ashinarundu brought me here Friday evening. That was 3 days ago. Which means that this is Monday evening. I let them down.
Everyone stood around Frank, not understanding his problem, but being there to support him nonetheless. Frank's horse nudged her way into the circle and looked down.
It's okay, Frank. My powers are not limited to space or time.
Everyone looked to the talking horse except Mog, who immediately took to his knees and lowered his head.
I have a talking horse.
Welcome back, my goddess.
With a swirl of magic, Frank's horse transformed into Ashinorundu, complete with her pink ribbon which, by all appearances, had been hidden in her mane just earlier.
When your journey here is over, you will return to your home as if not a moment has passed.
Really?
I have come back again to see you, Frank. At the next of your many crossroads, there are many paths ahead, many decisions to make.
What do I do, Ashinorundu?
Just Ashi, please. You too, Mog. Now, Frank, I can't tell you what to do. Look inside and listen to the voices of the Fates. They call out to you, lending their experience and wisdom to you when you need it most.
Frank nodded, then closed his eyes. Sure, the theory seemed simple enough. Shadow Spy, or Shadow King, or something else entirely. Digging deep, Frank focused his thoughts and searched until he heard a tiny voice. Though it was small, it was strong and unyielding. Frank opened his eyes and turned to face his friends.
Okay, guys. I know just exactly what we have to do.
And that would be?
Frank took a deep breath and he said, "Well, what did Frank say?" To be honest, I'm not entirely sure myself. Now, remember when I told you that you, the all-important listener, would be the steward of poor Frank's fate? Well, you really are. What will Frank do next? You tell us. Please visit letsbefrankthepodcast.com and click on the What Would Frank Do link, and in 500 characters or less, tell us what you think Frank should do next. Remember, you are the fates controlling Frank's fate. Let's try not to let him down. Some of the music and sound effects in this podcast come from Tabletop Audio. If you're running a game, the perfect background music and sound effects can be difficult to assemble. But with Tabletop Audio, you can play songs fitting your campaigns and use sword clangs and magical bursts to set the mood for the adventure and take your game to the next level. For your next RPG game, visit tabletopaudio.com. The rest of the music comes from Kevin MacLeod's brilliant website, incompetech.com. If you're looking for music for your podcast, Kevin has composed more than 2,000 royalty-free songs released under the Creative Commons license. So when you need music, think incompetech.com and tell them that Frank sent you.